Hey, what up, guys? So I'm coming to you this morning. We're continuing the year-end top 10s. This segment's going to be the 130-pound super featherweight division. And on this video, we're going to do the dropouts from last year's top 10, the guys that dropped out of the top 10, and numbers 8, 9, and 10 on the list. So let's kick it off with the guys that dropped out. We have 7 fighters that dropped out of the top 10 from last year. So this division has really has had a turnover this year, big time. So let's get it rolling. We'll start with the first fighter to drop out from last year's top 10 is former 2-time undefeated and former 2-time super featherweight champion Gervonta Davis. Davis in 2019 fought at 130 for the most part. His actual last fight is this weekend. When he takes on Yuriorkis Gamboa, but it's going to be his debut at 135, which is the proper weight for him. We'll get into his year in detail when we discuss him and the lightweight top 10, because he's already in the lightweight top 10 for moving up in weight. But that's the reason for dropping out. He now is he's 25 years old, so still very young, but I don't see him returning to the top 10 at 130 because he's had weight issues for making 130 for the last couple of years now. So I think a move up is good for him. The next fighter to drop out of the top 10 is former WBC champion Francisco Vargas. Vargas in 2019 went over, actually he got the long-awaited rematch with Miguel Berchelt for the WBC title. And the first time they fought was in January 2017. Berchelt at the time scored a major upset, 11th round knockout over Vargas. Vargas lost the title. Vargas only fought a couple times, between the rematch. So coming into the rematch, he was the underdog, but a lot of people wanted to see it. He fought as hard as he could, but he really got beat to the punch and beat up in that fight. And his new trainer, Joel Diaz, after 6 rounds, waved the fight off, said no more, and that was a good call because Vargas would have ended up getting hurt. He drops out of the top 10 because he ended up debuting at 135, moving up to lightweight, where he got, I believe, a 10-round or a 9-round technical decision win up there because a cut was caused. And, so he moved out of the 130-pound division, said his future's at 135. I think that's the right move. He's an older fighter. He's 35 years old now. And I think that was the right move for him if he still wants to box. But this year in 2020, this is going to be his last hurrah. I think he needs to try to prove that he's a legitimate fighter in this weight class. I forget who was mentioned as a possible opponent for him. I know they were talking about Ryan Garcia, and some of the guys that are floating around that division. So he's got some options, but this is his last hurrah right here. So hopefully he can have some success at 135. I always liked Vargas. But to be honest, I think he might want to consider retirement because he's been in a lot of wars early on in his career, and I just think, I think he's past it, in my opinion. I don't want to see him get hurt. But we'll see. He's going to keep chugging away, so we'll see. The next fighter to drop out is former WBA regular champion, or former WBA champion Alberto Machado. Machado entered the year as I believe he entered the year number 4 for me in 2019. He was coming off of 2018 where he just stayed busy, retained his world title, but took on nobodies. And finally he had another stay busy fight in February where he was going to take on little-known Andrew Cancio. Cancio really brought, heading into the fight, nobody thought he was going to win, Cancio, and they just thought Machado was going to just blow him out of the water. And at first round, he got the knockdown, but I don't know. In the second round, it looked like he got winded really bad and just, kind of fading and looked really gassed. And Cancio pounced on him and hurt him and continued to pretty much beat him to the punch and beat him up. And then finally in the fourth round, put him down with a body shot, and that was all she wrote. He scored a couple knockdowns in that round, and he knocked him out with a body shot, and Machado was done. So, tough knockout loss for him, but then he tried to get an immediate rematch in June. He got an immediate rematch with Andrew Cancio. They went toe-to-toe again, but he just looked zapped by the weight again. He made the excuse the first time that it was weight issues, that's why he lost. Second time, it was pretty much the same thing. Cancio went in and just blitzed him again. hit him with a hard body shot and put him down, and that was it. That was all she wrote for him. So, then he dropped out of the top 10 from the back-to-back losses to Cancio, but he moved up to lightweight also. He made his debut at lightweight in this month, December, got a knockout win, so hopefully that's the new place for him. He did not make my top 10 there, though, so 2020 needs to be a bounce-back year and a year where he really makes a debut and makes a statement in the lightweight division. There are a couple fights to be made out there. He's talked about fighting Francisco Vargas, so we'll see. I mean, I'd like to see that fight. They're both with Golden Boy. It'd be a good fight to make, and if he's truly a legit lightweight fighter, he should be able to beat Vargas, so we'll see, because he's only 29, so he's still in his physical prime. Lightweight sounds like the right choice for him, so we'll see what happens. The next fighter to drop out is former WBO champion Masayuki Ito, who entered the year number 8 for me. He was the WBO champion coming in, and he was coming off a good year in 2018 where he upset Christopher Diaz in Florida, which was a pro Puerto Rican crowd in favor of Diaz, and was, he was one of Bob Arum's, undefeated rising prospects, and he upset him to capture the vacant WBO title. Then he made a mandatory defense in December and got a knockout win. So Ito was looking good. In May, he stepped in against ex-Marine Jamel Herring and got upset in that fight. He lost the WBO title. He was right at the tail end of the top 10 when that happened, so I dropped him out. He's still technically, he ended up coming back and getting a win, and he's still technically, he's ranked number 6 by the WBO. So he's still in the division. This got to be a bounce-back year for Ito. He's got to prove that he wasn't a fluke and he belongs. So he needs to try to get back in there, face somebody legitimate, and get himself at least into an eliminator, because he's not a big name, so he might not be able to really do much. But just got to wait and see. But that's what Ito needs to do. The next fighter to drop out of the top 10 is former WBA champion Jason Sosa. Sosa entered 2019 ranked number 9. He was coming off of kind of a not too busy 2018, and he got rocked in his first fight in 2019. He got rocked and almost knocked out by some nobody. He came back and got the win. And he got a couple wins prior to a WBC title shot against Miguel Berchelt in November. Not many people were thinking he was going to win that fight, but that he could. If he was the old Jason Sosa, he could do some damage, but that wasn't the case. He was, I'm sorry, I'm drawing a blank here. The Berchelt was way too much for Sosa. Sosa early looked okay, but Berchelt was just way too aggressive, way too good, and he hurt Sosa badly and knocked him out in the 4th round. Sosa, 31 years old now, entering 2020. He never really was that talented of a fighter. He kind of overachiever right here. He could still be a stepping stone type guy, and possibly, 2020, he needs to just be that stepping stone guy and maybe get a win here, a win there, and try to climb back in. But I'm not sure if Sosa can really get back on that top elite level, because, Miguel Berchelt murdered him. It wasn't even a fight. He really dominated him. And, I don't know if Sosa can get back to the top of the division, but his way of trying is to just start, go back to the drawing board and start over. So we'll see what happens. He's still ranked number 12 by the WBC right now, so we'll see what he can do. The next fighter to drop out of my top 10 at 130 is former unified featherweight champion Yuriorkis Gamboa. Gamboa dropped out just because he moved up to the lightweight division pretty much. His last couple of years have not been, he hasn't been too clear about what division he wants to fight in. So, he's floated between 130 and 135 for a few years now. Depending on where he decides to fight in that moment is where I've ranked him. Well, he fought, I know he fought Rocky Martinez this year, got a knockout win, and he's actually fighting Gervonta Davis in the lightweight division for a vacant lightweight title next. He's not ranked there, but I don't think he's gonna make really a dent on Davis. I think Davis is gonna destroy him and knock him out. But that's happening this Saturday. But I do like Gamboa still. He's a veteran, but he's 38. I think it's kind of his last run he's looking at right here. And if he does well enough in that fight, and makes makes a good fight of it against Davis, he's going to be ranked at lightweight. So we'll get into him more in detail, but I don't see him returning to the... He could always return to 130, though, because, you know, and if he wants to resume his career, because that's always been more of his natural weight. He was at his best at featherweight, 126, but he had some success at 130. He's got more pop at 130, so he can make both weights. So it's kind of up in the air whether, after this fight with Davis, whether he comes back down to 130 or stays at 135. We just got to wait and see. And then the last guy to drop out of the top 10 from last year is former world title challenger Robinson Castellanos. Castellanos was coming into 2019, coming off of 2018, where he went in against Shavkat Rakhimov, undefeated Russia, and got destroyed in only a couple rounds. That really hurt him right there. That took him out of contention pretty much. And but because of what he had done the last couple years, like his great fight with Jezreel Corrales for the world title, you know, losing a close decision there, and a win over Yuriorkis Gamboa, he knocked Gamboa out. I had him, you know, ranked at the tail end of the top 10. I think he was tied for 10th with Gamboa heading into this year. But he didn't fight at all in 2019. Castellanos been around for a while, even though, and he's 37 years old, so he took a year off. If he comes back, it's probably going to be at 130 to 135, but I'm not sure how much more he can do. I think taking a year off, maybe it was good for him, we'll see, but not a great, you know, didn't really do much. So, all right, guys, I didn't really get to, it's almost a 12-minute video, didn't get to numbers 8, 9, and 10. I don't want these videos to go on forever, so I'm going to come back and do those fighters in a few minutes when I do another video. So those are the dropouts for 130-pound super featherweight division. True Boxing, you've been hit with the truth.